How's our financial plan coming?
Super! Chris, any advice?
With Western and Southern, preparing for your financial future can be easier than you think. Favorite receiver?
Huh?
To get started, visit westernsouthern.com.
Alrighty, we're almost to the start of the real NFL season, Thanksgiving, which means it's time to argue about who the best team in the NFL is. Now, Steve has been given the team he didn't want, which is the San Francisco 49ers, but because you're a man of many talents.
Yeah, you can fight for anything, right?
You can fight for anything if you force yourself to. So let's start with you. You're gonna tell us why the 49ers are the best team in the NFL.
All right, so just using, our PFF grades, sitting right near the top. So I think just from a balance across the board standpoint, massive jump forward in their pass rush, massive jump forward in their coverage unit on the back end, from worst to second best this year. And you have an offensive play caller in Kyle Shanahan. As much as we say, throw the damn ball, we trash the running game. He is creative enough that they've had games where they've won behind a really good running game, and then when he does scheme it up in the pass game, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, top 10 in the NFL. No matter which way you slice the play caller evaluation, open throws beyond the sticks, Kyle Shanahan always shows up top 5, top 10, right? So he's doing his best to get the most out of Jimmy Garoppolo, despite Jimmy, wanting to throw red zone picks and all that stuff throughout the year. So play calling, they can win with the pass game, they can win a little bit with the run, and the most improved defense in the NFL.
I'm curious about this. So when Kyle Shanahan was last in this position with one of the best teams in the NFL, he was up, 28-3 and ended up losing to your Pats. Is there anything about the way that his offense works that worries you should they make it to the Super Bowl and be up by a lot against Bill Belichick?
I don't know. I don't think they got conservative at that point.
No, they didn't.
The thing, right? I mean, they were still throwing it a little bit. I mean, it took a strip sack. It took some freak things to happen. Julio, I mean, if they didn't get knocked out of field goal range and Matt Ryan taking a sack that he shouldn't have taken in that game, we're talking about Julio's catch that is as one of the best in NFL history that kind of sealed the deal. Some freak things happened there. And I think what they have done in the run game is taken that outside zone scheme and added some gap and just variations to it. So they're a little bit, unlike what Sean McVay's done, they've been able to add to what was already a really good offensive system.
Yeah, I watched Kyle Shanahan call games over the years, whether he was in Washington, whether he was in Cleveland, then in Atlanta, and there had always been sort of this backroom conversation about his inability to close out games as a play caller. Now, this is with different players, right?
Yeah.
Different quarterbacks, different running backs, different offensive linemen. The real offense is predicated on their ability to run the ball, and maybe more in a powerful way when you get into your 4-minute offense, to eat clock, not have to throw the ball in order to generate first downs, because if you get the incompletion, obviously the clock stops. I think that's where the offense even failed with Atlanta. Their ability to sustain the run game, but do it in a powerful way. They needed to be able to run the ball late in the game in order to eat clock. And when they weren't able to do that, it backfired, because remember, they tried to throw the ball. Devontae Freeman misses a block, then you get a sack, and it just seemed to snowball, and what we call reverse momentum kind of took place. They started going in the other direction. And so I've seen it over the course of many different stops, their inability to not just run the ball, but to not be able to run the ball in a powerful way and knock people off the line of scrimmage. And I think to Steve's point, they're doing a better job of that this year. They can run power. We know they run the zone scheme, but they can run power run game inside. And so that could possibly change at this stop in San Francisco.
They're actually the only team that does that.
Yeah.
Most outside zone teams are committed to the
That's
zone
exactly
run.
right.
They are not. They're the only team that does both a high rate of zone run and a high rate of lead block runs.
We saw on Sunday, run game not exactly, very impactful. Jimmy G, granted against the Cardinals defense isn't good at all, was able to bring them back and make plays. So hopefully, if you're a Niners fan, that's a sign of things to come as opposed to a limitation inherent in that team. Matt Ryan, when they were in Atlanta together, I think a far better version of Jimmy G than Jimmy G is. And
I agree,
hence,
yep.
They made it a little bit farther than most teams.
Don't you slander that guy. All right, Sully. Usually a popular topic is people talking about how great the Patriots are.
Yeah.
But I've actually been hearing a lot of the opposite. All the flaws and flies in the ointment.
Yeah.
But they're 9-1.
Yeah.
We always see the Patriots get out to slow starts. This might be their best start record-wise.
Are they the worst 9-1 team in
Worst
history?
9-1 team in NFL history. So why are the Patriots the best team in the NFL?
Well, as you all know, over the course of this 20-year dynasty that they've established, right, with the Patriots, that their demise have often been greatly exaggerated. I think this is one of those times. The things that Bill Belichick really looks at, he looks at their ability to take the ball away on defense and keep you from scoring. They have the league's #1 ranked scoring defense. They take the ball away from you more than any other defense in the NFL. Offensively, they rank in the top 5 when it comes to protecting the football and still scoring. They're scoring 28 points a game. So everyone's knocking Tom Brady because maybe he's not at the top of his game. No, he's not the young Tom Brady, but he's still good enough to get it into the end zone. They're still creative enough to design a play to have a former quarterback like Julian Edelman throw the ball. Oh, by the way, they just traded for another guy who's a former quarterback by the name of Mohamed Sanu. That play is yet to come somewhere down the line.
They better use it.
Just
if
write
they
it
traded
down,
a second
right?
rounder for him and he doesn't throw a pass, that's fire.
He will, and he can sling it. I mean, he can. I've seen him throw a 71-yarder on a rope to A.J. Green. And so I just believe that coaching matters. Bill Belichick will figure it out. But the key metrics for him, their ability to take the ball away on defense and not allow you to score, and on offense, their ability to protect the ball and still score the ball in a number of different ways.
Yeah, they're constructed. If you're going to have a team with a quarterback playing in the middle of the pack, they're constructed perfectly.
Absolutely.
Because defensively, they're good in all the right places. If you look at, basically where they are in terms of adding value, their defensive backs collectively add the most value in the entire NFL. So you're looking at guys like Devin McCourty, Jason McCourty, Stephon Gilmore, not playing to the level he played last year, but still playing very well. Jonathan Jones, a guy that has just entered into the scene. Duron Harmon as well in his role. Like, they do a great job of coverage on defense, and that, aside from their schedule, which has been pretty weak, that is to me the thing that you want second after having a great quarterback, which admittingly they're not getting right now.
Yeah.
Every single year.
That's the same
Every
thing.
single year they lose a game.
Yeah.
They look bad. It's in Miami. It's in Tennessee. Belichick's lost his fastball.
Kansas
McDaniels
City.
and Brady aren't on the same page. I mean, it's like, ad nauseum. And now it's, Gronk isn't there. So when it comes down to it, everyone remembers they won the Super Bowl because Gronk was just a mismatch nightmare. And they ultimately were able to leverage that to the one scoring drive. And he's not there anymore. But I can't help but think about how smart it is to not peak now.
Yeah.
And they just do the best job of that every year. They're not worried about where they are right now. They're worried about putting guys in places so that by the time they get to the playoffs, they know where to best put them.
How do you control for that though? I don't know how you completely control for that. I mean, they do make some late season adjustments, but we've seen some duds in December as well from them. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you control for that. I think there is still a concern with the pass game, right? We're talking about Brady is. Last year, I said he regressed back into 2014 Tom Brady. So he was he went through a stretch where he was absolutely incredible, wasn't missing throws, all that stuff. He's regressed back into a few years ago and maybe even a little bit further now. So as that's happened though, Gronk got worse last year, even though he could step up in crunch time, right? And the playmakers around, they won the Super Bowl with Cordero Patterson on the outside, Julian Edelman, who was great, but Philip Dorsett. They're piecing things together.
Cordero's raised the Bears to new heights.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my point
running
is,
back that matters.
if they were going to handle Brady missing a few more throws than he has in the past, it would have been beneficial to have a tight end to throw to, or better playmakers to throw to.
Let me ask you this. So the Brady regression is very interesting. To me, it's all about if you give him, even if he's under pressure, he's so smart that he's going to be able to find guys. But there's a limit to all of these things, and that O-line has been a disaster. And so it's look, maybe it's 2.1 seconds, right? If you just give him 2.1 seconds, the guy will beat you. But if you just add 10% more dropbacks where that pressure is getting there a little bit quicker, he's getting a little bit older, the playmakers are getting a little bit worse. those things all add up. And at some point, it might just be too much for them to overcome a hot Kansas City team.
And to your point, because I'm the guy making the case for the Patriots, the greater concern is that the areas where Tom Brady has always been very good is against the blitz and with the quick passing game. Those numbers are significantly down this year. And he's not performing as well against the blitz or with quick passing game like what you described. And so what happens when the things that he's always been good at, when those things are taken away? No coach in the NFL is more comfortable playing a low-scoring game and winning on defense, as evident by the Super Bowl win last year against the number one ranked scoring team in the NFL. So he's okay. Bill Belichick is okay with not having to be in a shootout, not having Tom Brady at his best. I've always said that as quarterbacks get older in the National Football League, you got to get better around them. And I think Eric already described those areas where they are significantly good. I know we talk about the absence of tight ends on the offense. This offense has elected to go through the running backs to try to get those matchups and still be able to win and manufacture plays on offense. And that's why I like, just as a coach and as a scheme and as a team, they're very versatile. They're very skilled at many different areas, and they can morph into becoming whatever it is they need to be and win whatever style of fight they need to win.
That's a good point.
It's great.
All right, the team everyone loves.
Speaking of peaking too early, peaking too early, I'm going to argue here for the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens,
good.
Right now, 8-2. Coming off of a huge win against New England, followed up by a win against Cincinnati, and then another big win against Houston. For me, it comes down to the fact that much like the Patriots, this team is constructed well. Lamar Jackson is one of the top 6, 7, 8 guys in terms of wins above replacement at the QB position. Offensively, Greg Roman is the second best play caller in the NFL right now, behind Andy Reid and ahead of Kevin Stefanski. He is putting movable parts together. They're throwing the ball to the tight end, right, which we know is the most efficient pass in football. They're just offensively, they're doing a bunch of things to make life easier on Lamar Jackson, and to his credit, he is taking full advantage of that. Defensively, we saw early in the season they struggled. They gave up a lot of yardage at times, and in many cases gave up a lot of points. But since they acquired Marcus Peters to play as their third, fourth corner, they have a defense that I think is built to last. With Earl Thomas, Marlon Humphrey, and Peters also with Jimmy Smith and Brandon Carr. They make up for the fact that they're not brilliant up front by being great in coverage. And then, of course, they got John Harbaugh, who makes seemingly all the right decisions with the use of the numbers and everything. So for me, my only worry, if I'm thinking about a Ravens team being the best team in the NFL, is the Patriots play the long game. The Ravens right now are trying to prove a point every single week. And the question is regression going to hit for them?
Can I bring this point up? Because I absolutely love the Ravens. I love the way they play. I think they're doing some very unique things. I think Marquise Hollywood Brown has really hit. Now, he hasn't hit on the big long balls recently, right? But to have done it early in the season was enough to stretch that field enough to where the tight ends and the running backs, like what you mentioned, are able to operate over the middle of the field. My concern with the Ravens is what happens if they get into a game and they get behind on the scoreboard. Yep. Can they stick with that run game? Can they score fast enough? Can they generate enough explosive plays quickly to be able to come from behind and win with the run game and with their unique style of play? I think that's, to me, is the greater concern. But their defense is good enough to keep the score down to allow them to play their style of play.
That's my question. They have been the best team at the first 15 plays, and it's not even close.
That's right.
Not even close.
But to me, the reason is they know if they get out ahead early, they're going to be tough to stop.
That's exactly right. Yes.
So they fire their bullets early.
That's right.
Now, there's going to be a game where you're going to fire a few blanks. You're going to miss the target a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So what do they do? Because I think a big part of it in that Patriots game, you just can't run Lamar Jackson into the ground. Will they do that if they get behind? Will they just say, heck, this is one game.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever it takes.
We have data for what happens when they get behind. In Kansas City earlier in the season, they were behind by multiple scores, and Lamar Jackson struggled as a result. He went 22 of 43 for less than 270 yards.
And those were nice stats for how he actually played.
Because he had some Hail Marys that went his way. Against Cleveland the following week, they were also behind, and Lamar Jackson turned the ball over a couple times with 2 interceptions. He also took 4 sacks. And so we see it. I mean, Lamar Jackson is not as good when coming from behind, and I think most quarterbacks are worse when they come from behind, but I think Lamar Jackson, it's accentuated because he doesn't have as much experience there. He's not the traditional drop back and pass guy. And deception goes away when you're behind. You can't run play action as easily. You can't you can't run trick plays. You can't run on unconventional downs. You can't pass on unconventional downs as much. And that hurts them, I think, a little bit. So it's going to be a big test, and we saw it last year in the playoffs. In their down the stretch run, the last 7 games where they went 6-1, they weren't behind very much. The only game they lost was to Kansas City, which is basically a back and forth game, and they got behind against the Chargers, and we saw what happened. And that to me is the one concern.
The defense did hold against the Houston Texans week 11. Those first 2 possessions by Baltimore, you said they script it all and they do well. They didn't do anything on those first 2 possessions. Nope. However, I think they scored on the next 7 possessions.
Right.
So they got out to a slow start, but it goes to show you that they know how to be patient. If it doesn't come to them early, but the defense held it, to 0-0 on the
I was
scoreboard.
Say, they
so they were
down.
able to play their style of play.
They weren't down, and
That's right.
That was why that PI that was not called on Hopkins in the end zone was so big.
That's right.
Because it puts them in such a different. It puts the opposing defense in a different mind state.
That's right.
Right, which is almost like, hey, you should just get in that mind state already, and not try and match personnel as easily.
They also got a sack on almost half of the times that Deshaun Watson was pressured, which again is not something that's going to carry moving forward.
A lot of that's Watson held the ball.
Exactly.
Right. Watson held the ball for 9.2 seconds and then fumbled it, and then he threw back across his body for an interception. A lot of that was Watson driven.
You could tell, I think, that he was trying to put it on his back.
And if you look at the Ravens,
which has worked a lot of times this year for Watson, but that's hero ball gone wrong.
The last time a team made the Super Bowl without a first-round bye was the Ravens in 2012. So one of the big things is an important, down the stretch, finishing well. Kansas City on their heels, Houston less so, but still on their heels, and obviously New England competing for that 1 seed. The Ravens down the stretch here, they have at Rams, against 49ers at home, at Bills, and then they close with the Browns and the Steelers. This is going to be a tougher test for them than we've seen through their first
if they're the best team in the NFL, as you purport them to be, it won't matter. The best team in the NFL is the New Orleans Saints. And here's the reason why. They have the best players and the best coach at leveraging those best players. Here's what I mean by that. Drew Brees, the lowest rate of negatively graded or uncatchable passes in the NFL, regardless of how you split it. If I'm looking at a guy that can make sure I win football games, it's a guy that will mitigate mistakes better than anybody else. And then how do they make explosive plays? They have Alvin Kamara, who's the best receiving running back, I think this side of Christian McCaffrey, and then Michael Thomas. And the key here, Tom Brady might not have an offensive line, but Drew Brees does. And even if they don't get the first down on the first 3 plays, Sean Payton's willing to take that chance to go for it on 4th down. So to me, that offense is the one that I am most confident in. And on the defensive side of the ball, they used to be a sieve. They're not anymore. They have a bunch of playmakers at each level of the defense, right? They have Cameron Jordan, they've got Marshawn Lattimore, and Davis now at the linebacker position is making some plays as well. So they are a complete team from head coach to offense to defense. And when it comes down to it, I need the quarterback that's going to be in the best position to win. That's Drew Brees.
Yeah, and my concern here, and I agree with almost everything you said, the secondary for one, the depth there is extraordinary. The one last week without Marshawn Lattimore, their best player, I think, on their defense. So, but whether it was Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Brees, we're talking about the team with the lowest average depth of target in the NFL. And when the same concerns we have with Baltimore, if the team gets behind, we saw that with Atlanta 2 weeks ago, it's difficult to come back when you have to cross the street 15 times to get to the end zone. Eventually, you're going to get hit by a car, right? And you need a team when times are tough, and in the playoffs, those times will be tough at times, you have to be able to stretch the defense. And I've always said, when it was with Bridgewater, I always said, is it an error of omission or commission? Are they throwing short because they have to, or are they throwing short because they choose to, and they have the ability to throw long when the time comes and when the situation presents itself? And just anecdotally watching Breeze's games, we're talking about a guy with, I think, the lowest big-time throw rate in the NFL right now, talking about a guy who has come up short with arm strength a few times on some of those throws. That's my concern, is that I think that their offense maybe isn't as versatile as we purport it to be, given all their great players.
How many times you had thumb surgery?
But this is something that happened to him last year, though, too.
Right, but it happened to him last year, and they should have gone to the Super Bowl.
They should have, yeah.
Yeah. So the guy with the most completions on deep throws in the history of PFF is Drew Brees. It's not as though he can't throw it. To me, right now, they are easing him back in to avoid any sort of repeat of last year, where maybe he lost a little steam at the end, but there's no chance in hell that if they need to throw the deep ball, I trust Drew Brees to throw it.
Here's the thing. We are sitting here debating whether or not Sean Payton and Drew Brees can produce explosive plays in the passing game. But it's real. I mean, it really is real. Even if you go back to that NFC Championship game, I saw Drew Brees have the ball twice, okay, where they had a chance to put it away in regulation, they had a chance to put it away in overtime, and did it at home. They played the whole season for that moment, that opportunity. I already said that as a quarterback gets older, Drew Brees is in his 40s, you have to be better around him. I have not, and I would love to see the Saints add more explosive playmakers around him. And as good as Michael Thomas is, he's not that explosive, stretch the field type of wide receiver. Great at contested catches, great over the middle of the field. Is he going to get deep behind the defense consistently? He's not that guy. I think Ted Ginn is probably the guy within this offense. They went out and got Jared Cook. He should be able to win some matchups. We all know Alvin Kamara is going to win his matchups. But who's going to be the guy to create big plays to help stretch the field? And is Drew going to be able to connect consistently with those? We know he's done that over the course of his career, over the course of us grading him here at PFF. But this is a league of what have you done for me lately? Defensive coordinators will track what you've done lately and say, here's what they're not doing. And until they show us they could do it, we're going to shrink the field. We don't have to defend every blade of grass because we're not sure if he can stretch it at 41 and 42 years old. So that's the new narrative.
The Rams did do that in the NFC Championship last year. They did a good job of compressing it. Breeze hasn't completed a pass beyond 20 yards over the last 2 weeks. Maybe they're easing him in because of the thumb.
That's what he's going with.
I have had thumb surgery, though. My left hand, though. It's my not throwing.
It's got to be at least a little bit of a concern because I think we forget. We always put offensive production completely on the quarterback, but I think your point about they don't, 10 kid can run deep every now and again, but so much of offensive passing production is driven by the quarterback, but also dependent on what you have and who you're throwing to. So I think the Saints are one of the most well-rounded teams in a lot of ways, but I do think the passing game is a little less well-rounded than it's been in the past.
We have crowned, each of us, the best team in the NFL, which means a team that we didn't talk about is destined to win the Super Bowl.
Bills.
That's for sure.
Bills are coming out of this.
But what I think is best is each of us had a great point as to why the team we argued for is the best, and there are a ton of maladies with each of these teams that'll make this a really fun and exciting stretch of the NFL season. This is why they play the games.
That's right.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.